Lahat ba ng bata kailangan paluin?
Violence, it does instill fear, and fear is what keeps us safe.
According to UNICEF Philippines, 3 out of 5 children yung naka-experience ng pamamalo. Pag tayo ay namalo, so say for example may mga parents na namalo, nagkakaroon siya ng conflict sa relationships. Mas nag-a-isolate yung bata, mas nag-keep siya ng secrets, and mas tinatago niya yung totoong nangyayari sa kanya, hindi na sinasabi sa mga magulang niya because that child is actually afraid sa mga consequences na pwedeng gawin ng mga magulang sa kanya.
Bakit siya nagiging ganun? Bakit din na pinapasa? Because it works.
Ang tatalakayin po nating paksa ngayon ay may kinalaman sa pagdidisiplina ng isang magulang sa kanyang anak. Sa panahon po ba natin ngayon, maituturing pa rin bang epektibong pamamaraan ng pagdidisiplina ang pagpaparusang pisikal, kagaya ng pagpapalood sa asin at iba pang mga kagaya nito? O hindi naman kaya ito ay makalumang pamamaraan lamang na kailangan ng itigil at palitan ng mas mahinahon o banayad na paraan ng pagtuturo? Bago ko po ipakilala ang ating mga panauhin at ipagpatuloy ang ating talakayan, ako po si Armando Bibay at ito po ang Unbiased. Ang una ko pong ipakikilala ay isang martial arts practitioner and coach. Siya po ay isang event host, voiced artist, TV character actor, communications trainer, peak performance and development coach, also known as Amplified Man. Palakpakan po natin si Mr. Yuri.
Hindi naman palakpakan yung sarili. No? Hello, everybody. Well, he already said what I am, so I'm gonna go with that.
Alright, maraming salamat ho. Ang susunod ko namang ipapakilala ay isang licensed professional teacher with several years of experience teaching mathematics and science. And in addition to his work in education, he is also a skilled voice-over artist and events host. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ram.
So good morning po, and I hope that after this podcast is marami kayong matutunan ng aral from listening to this and watching this. Yun na po.
Alright, maraming salamat po. At hindi na natin patatagalin pa, Mr. Yuri, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, first things first. I want to set the parameters of my case and my argument. My case and argument are not going to be limited to the fact that this is not a one-size-fits-all. Hindi ito parang, okay, when I say this, ito yung absolute or this is a universal fact. It's always a case-to-case basis, and depending on the level of mistake that a child does, so do the punishment. I'm not gonna spank my kid out of him or her spilling his milk. I'm not gonna spank my child just because natapon niya yung gatas or nabasag niya yung furniture or whatsoever. Again, depending on the level of mistake, so do the punishment. And my spanking would be the result of something dangerous. You know, a dangerous mistake that would cost somebody else's life or somebody else's. I'm trying to. The examples are disrespect. Disrespecting somebody is something that would cost somebody's reputation, and a lot of kids today do that. Bullying. I'm not gonna tolerate bullying, and if you don't get punished for it, you're gonna continue bullying a lot of people growing up. And this understanding would lead them to believe, or at least embrace the fact that bad behaviors would result to bad situations, or even worse situations. You know, I'd rather spank you now and experience the punishment, or let's say, quote unquote, trauma of it, than you not being able to feel any kind of punishment today and then grow up knowing that it's okay to bully somebody, it's okay to disrespect somebody, and this would lead you to further damage. You would go to jail. And we know the situation in prison today, and more, kung marami tayong sinesend na mga bata na lumalaki na ganito yung pag-uugali, ganito yung behavior nila, ganito yung stand nila, na okay lang pala mambully. Wala namang parusa galing sa magulang ko. Di fine. I'll bully more and more people. It gives me that hype. It gives me that, crack. So it's all good. Now, we have to condition our children to know that there are consequences to actions. They can't simply live a life knowing na, okay, sige, basta kailangan yung mundo mag-adjust sa gusto ko. Hindi eh. Halimbawa ako, nakaramdam ako ng konting anger and dahil lang somebody pissed me off, something pisses me off, then nakaramdam ako ng konting anger and I'm gonna turn into somebody, tapos wala man lang kahit anong return yun. Pag lumalaki ako, I will grow up knowing na okay lang pala yun. This is how corrupt politicians are made. This is how bad people are made. Not getting any kind of punishment for whatever they do. At kung kayang gawin ng bata, syempre mas lalo na pag malaki na sila. Mas kaya kong gawin to. Nung bata nga ako, nagagawa ko to. Mas dapat kong gawin to. So, again, it's all conditioning. It's all mind conditioning. And if we're able to bring our children into to the level of thinking or to the level of psychology wherein they know that they have to be disciplined people, they know that there are other people in this world. Kasi I'm not trying to take away the fact na dapat naman talaga kinakausap mo. Communication is not actually the key, but comprehension. At nandun na nga tayo eh. You communicate to your kids na, eto anak, masama yung ginawa mo, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's communication. Okay, what does that mean to the child? It didn't mean anything, but spanking does. That's their way of knowing na, okay, ito yung comprehension. This is when comprehension starts. Maiintindihan nila ngayon na ito pala yung katumbas ng pagkakamali ko. And they would grow up to be good citizens. Now, as I was saying earlier, prevention is better than cure. We'd rather bring cases where it has worked to the majority or for the majority than experiment on something that might not be as effective. I'm not saying that ito lang ang pwede natin gawin, but it has been done before, and of course based on personal experience. Okay, got it.
Sir Ram, you have 2 minutes for cross-examination.
So for my first question, you mentioned a while ago na hindi sa pagkakataon pinapalo mo yung anak. Tama? So where do we draw the line kung kailan siya dapat paluin at kailan siya dapat hindi papapaluin?
Okay. Do we have the opportunity to answer that? As mentioned earlier, it depends on the gravity of the situation. Again, I'm not gonna spank my child out of a spoiled milk or a spilled milk or a cracked furniture. But again, if it refers to a different person, it destroys somebody else's reputation or destroys somebody else's life, then I'm gonna spank my child. If he disrespects his grandmother, he disrespects his neighbor, hindi siya marunong mag-flush ng toilet, hindi siya marunong ng mga simple hygiene na tinuro ko na. Kasi, ang madalas na nangyayari, pag tinuro mo na yan, at least once, twice, dapat may confidence ka sa mga anak mo na hindi sila bobo eh. And I think na pag hindi gumagana na ito tinuro ko na tapos hindi mo pa rin natututunan, spanking is necessary. Kasi it means it's either bobo ka or hindi ka nakinig. And maraming nare-resolve na bobo pag ini-spank sila. Kaya nga may recreation na tinatawag eh. Prisons do that. A lot of prisons do that. Not in the country though, not in the Philippines, but hindi naman kasi limited ang parusa na dapat kailangan nakaka-experience sila ng extreme trauma. Hindi naman to limited sa ganon. It's just very important that they should know that whenever they do something, there is supposed to be an equivalent reaction to it. I can't remember who said that. Isaac Newton. All right, you're a science teacher. But there, I said it. And it's not even a theory. It's a law. Right there. So it's a universal fact. And if we don't guarantee them this response, darating yung araw, tayo bilang mga magulang, hindi na nila tayo rerespetuhin. Kasi nakikita nila na, okay naman pala kay daddy na pag-ganon-ganon lang ako.
Okay, time is up for the answer. Proceed to your next question.
My next question
Okay.
is, since we're talking about the child, up until what age dapat itigil yung pamamalo?
Okay, sure. Well, okay, all right. Already have 6 kids. One of them is a 4-year-old, and one of them is a 22-year-old. I remember na yung the soonest that they turned 11 or 12, that's the time that I no longer touch them. I don't. I would want to be honest that I don't know for what basis. It may be a parent's gut or maybe a parent's feel of his own child. Especially may mga daughters ako, so when they started menstruating, di ba, hindi ito yung, di ba, nandun na nga sila sa level where they should be facing life, tapos biglang papaluin pa sila. Kasi, and having that said, since science explains din na bakit ka ba nag-menstruate sa age na yun, it means you're maturing. So sa akin, mas naiintindihan ko ngayon na mas kaya niyang mag-comprehend ngayon sa sasabihin ko kasi mas mature na siya. Hindi katulad nung bata pa siya. Kahit naman explain ko na explain, wala pa siya sa level ng ganung maturity. Hindi niya maintindihan. But spanking does. May intindihan niya ngayon, okay, sige, shut up ako. I'll figure this out, I'm sure. Pero for now, my dad loves me so much that he does not want me to take any further damage by doing the same mistake over and over.
Okay, time's up po for the answer.
I'm good po.
Okay? Okay na ako tayo sa mga questions. Right? So, you have 5 minutes for your first round.
All right, so first of all, the things that I'm going to say here are from the background of an educator. And at the same time, I have also experienced na pinapalo ng mother ng single mom ko and also ng family members like yung tito and tita and so on. So for this, what I'm going to say is what I'm going to say are the alternatives sa pamamalo. Kasi I believe in the power of non-violence. So there are child-friendly methods on how to discipline a child. Example, positive reinforcement. You said a while ago that prevention is better than cure, which I totally agree on. So in order for a child not to commit any mistakes, why don't we give the child rewards, words of appreciation, para yung tamang gawa niya is continuously nagagawa. And at the same time, another method is yung timeouts. Hindi talaga maiwasan na magkamali ang mga bata. For the timeouts, what can a parent do is, number one, i-isolate niya yung child niya, kausapin. I believe in the power of words. And kailangan i-process niya kung anong pagkakamaling nagawa ng bata. Another method is yung natural consequences. Ito nangyayari talaga to sa totoong buhay. Say for example, yung bata nasira niya yung kanyang laruan or sinira niya on purpose. Or worse, yung bata sinira niya yung laruan ng kanyang kalaro. So what will happen for that? Are you going to spank him? The answer is no. You will allow the child to experience the natural consequences. Kung mawalan siya ng laruan, mawawalan din siya ng toys. Kung sinira niya yung laruan ng kanyang classmate or ng kalaro, mawawalan siya ng kalaro. So for that, let the child suffer from his or her own consequences. In that way, matututunan niya magpahalaga ng bagay and also at the same time, matututunan niya kung paano magpahalaga ng relationships with others. Another method that I want to go ahead and open is yung tinatawag nating open communication. Us adults, it's actually very good na makakarinig tayo ng kaibigan na nagko-confess na, "Oy friend, may mali akong nagawa sa'yo," di ba? What more kung a child then is gawin dun yung bagay na yun na, "Sir," or "Mommy, Daddy, may mali akong nagawa." So for open communication, yung bata, nagsasabi siya ng pagkakamali niya, not because takot siya sa consequences, but because alam niya na yung adult is mag-guide sa kanya. Another one is yung sa modeling desired behavior. For us adults, it's important for us to be model of these kids. We're not perfect, we understand that, but we also create mistakes. For that, we also show them how to correct our mistakes by not doing any violent reactions. Last one is going to be the most effective, which is the loss of privilege. For this loss of privilege, say for example, ang isang bata is meron siyang maling nagawa talaga. Instead of punishing him by means of violent ways, why don't you take away the things that are important to them? Say for example, the gadgets, laptops, the mobile games, or something like that, the playtime, you remove that from them. The cell phone, you remove that from them. And that way, you're giving the consequences to a child that are not violent. Not violent. Hindi siya violent. So those are the many methods that I would like to share, which are child-friendly and non-violence. And for that, I'd like to end my quote for the first round with saying that violence will only teach fear. It will never teach you values.
Okay.
Okay, cross-examination, 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I don't have much questions, but I would want to ask how you define violence, because a lot of us have this understanding of violence where it's just chaos and all that. I want you to define violence for me.
Violence, can I go in? Violence exists in many forms. Even poverty is the worst form of violence. So in a child kasi, the word violence can be verbal and also can be physical. So for that, mas grabe yung effect ng physical violence more than any kind of violence na alam natin ngayon. So that is what we are trying to avoid, the physical violence that we are instilling to a child.
Okay. Well, which brings me to, having you said that, this brings me to another issue or another question. Because if violence is not limited to physical only, but you said that it's the worst or say most evil form of violence, physical violence, katulad ng example mo kanina, halimbawa, inagawan ng laruan or nag-away sila because of a toy and then you just allow them to face the consequences of the situation alone, suffer on their own, base sa sitwasyon, hindi mo sila pinalo, this and that. This also results to violence. Kasi two human beings to eh. Hindi naman to parang, okay, hinayaan ko lang na umiyak ako dito. It's not usually the response. Ang mangyayari dito, magsasapakan to. Bakang bata to. Malalakas loob nitong mga to. And I agree that yung violence, it does instill fear. And fear is what keeps us safe. This is exactly what keeps us safe from further harm. Kaya may takot tayo sa authority, may takot tayo sa Diyos, may takot tayo sa kung sinong namamahala. May safe tayo. We don't do further harm. Diba? May takot ka sa batas, so hindi ka papatay. May takot ka sa batas, hindi ka manggagahasa. It's very important that we instill fear. Having you said that, all the more na mas importante ngayon na maramdaman nila ngayon yung fear. Kasi, oy, may ginawa ako. Dapat pala akong matakot sa susunod. Kasi ito pala yung katapat nito. Yun lang.
Yes. For me, I believe that fear is a fundamental emotion. And for that, fear should not actually be coming from violence. So by all means, we should avoid all forms of violence, including the verbal and most especially the physical form of violence. Yeah.
Yun nga eh. If hindi nga natin siya ma-avoid kapag walang nakaramdam ng fear. Kasi if wala silang fear, lalaban sila eh, magre-retaliate sila eh. They would try to fight for their position in this life. So kaya nga importanteng ma-instill natin yung fear sa kanila na, oy, may authority tayo dapat sinusundan. Kaya nga, di ba, ang sabi, di ba,
Mr. Yuri, your role is to ask questions lang po muna.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yun lang. And sige, my question is, parang,
How do you instill fear?
no, how do we go by that? Na, kasi fear nga is what, yun yung ginagawa ng fear. It brings us to no solution, as you've said. But to me, yun nga yung reason bakit hindi magpapatuloy na gawin ng mga batang to yung mga ginagawa nilang mali. Kasi may takot sila.
Okay.
So where do we find the fine line, or at least, somewhere we can agree on?
I really believe that fear is actually important. Sabi ko nga kanina, is fear is a fundamental emotion. And also, you can get fear hindi lang sa violent ways. So I'll tell you an example kung paano ma-instill yung fear sa mga bata. So number one, you can use your eyes. By the use of your eyes, you can instill fear sa bata. Also, number two, you can also use your voice. And there are many methods on how we can instill fear sa bata na hindi gumagamit ng physical force. So there. And also providing consequences, ganun. You don't always have to resort to physical spanking, to physical forms of violence just to instill fear. There are many, many ways. We just have to be creative, we just have to be thoughtful, and we just have to be mindful of the things that we do to the children in order for them to be fully well. Yeah.
Any more question?
I have no further questions.
All right. Second round. Okay, second round. Another 5 minutes for your second round.
Some of the things that I'm about to say would be coming from a very reliable source, a reliable friend of mine. His name is Google. So I Googled, I Googled it. Well, according to one of the scientists out there who has a PhD, his name is Jorge Cuartas. He's a candidate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where he studied for the last 50 years the evidence that makes sense out of spanking. What does it do? And according to his research, he said that the activity or the brain activity of those who are physically, I don't want to say that word, but because it might not be relevant, but or physically damaged, let's say, or somebody who's spanked, somebody who's raped, somebody who's this and that. The physical activity is the same. Okay, all right. Now, assuming that, because it's only the physical activity that goes in and out, higher, lower, but it doesn't point out an evidence where it says that they are thinking the same thoughts. Okay? Kasi kaya nga tayo na-deliver dun sa fact na even today, a lot of people are not afraid to rape somebody. Hindi sila natatakot kasi nga walang nabigay na parusa sa kanila noon. Pero yung physical activity nila when somehow at their point in life they got raped, kaya meron silang revenge tactics today growing up. Pero dahil nga walang fear na na-instill because of a physical response to a certain act, hindi nila ngayon nakikita, hindi na sila nakaka-develop ng kahit anong fear, wala silang konsensya. Kasi nga, hindi na-instill yung physical, quote-unquote, violence that we were talking about earlier. So, it's very important that, kasi while I agree na there are a lot of ways to discipline a child, and I did agree, sabi ko nga kanina, simula pa lang, na hindi ko sinasabing hindi mo na dapat kausapin yung anak mo. Na hindi mo na sasabihin to, anak, bawal to, bawal yan. Pero yun nga as a child, hindi naman same tayo ng level Diba? Tayo as adults, hindi na gumagana yung palo sa atin kasi malalaki na tayo. Pero sa kanila, gumagana yon. Ang hindi gumagana sa kanila, yung knowledge na meron tayo. Knowledge natin yun Tayo naiintindihan natin yun. Pero them as kids, mababaw po yung understanding nila o anak, pag ginawa mo to, eto mangyayari. He's a child. Tayo, alam natin yun. Pero dahil nga, mas alam natin, kaya sa atin, hindi na gumagana yung palo. Sa kanila, this is the answer. This is the comprehension. Na dito, gagana yung brain activity nila, telling them na wait, meron palang nangyayari kapag ginagawa ko to. Hindi ko pala pwedeng gawin to paulit-ulit. Kasi meron palang kapalit to. And again, bibigyan ko lang ng much emphasis yung sinasabi ko kanina na I'd rather have them hurt today than them hurting somebody without paying any kind of price. Diba? And you mentioned too na kailangan din naman nila mag-suffer So, why allow them to suffer on their own na hindi din naman pa nila kaagad naiintindihan yung suffering na yon? Kasi bata pa sila. Hindi pa nila nakikita yon. Why do I have to suffer? That's why a lot of children rebel. Kasi they don't have a sense of fear. They don't have a sense of authority, not knowing na okay lang pala na ginagawa ko to. So to me, again, I'm just gonna put much more emphasis on what I said earlier, that it's very important to instill fear in this way kasi there's just really no other way. Now, when you look at soldiers, they happen to be the most disciplined individuals here in the country and in the world. Why is that? Because they get spanked every day. Diba? Now, ano yan eh, I understand the benefits of trauma responses. Pero kanina, when we were talking, when we were discussing, ito kasi nagke-create ng villains eh, and criminals eh. This is what creates villains and criminals. Yung may nagawa sa kanilang mali, pero sila mismo magre-resolve nung nagawa sa kanilang mali. I wanna put emphasis on...
Okay, time's up
Okay.
for your second round. You have 2 minutes to ask questions.
Have a very good arguments, Riri. So my question for you is that, number one, lahat ba ng bata kailangan paluin?
Again, depending on the level of the mistake. I have 6 kids. I meron akong isang anak amongst the 6 na hindi ko napalo kahit isang beses. So, yeah, maybe the answer is no. Hindi kailangan. Again, depending nga talaga sa level. Which means, yung iba kong mga anak, same level talaga sila ng frequency na they had to do that. And I'm saying, my eldest son is a 22-year-old, is almost 22 now, happens to be one of the most intelligent guys I know, personally know. I'm not saying it because I'm his father, but I'm saying it because he's a product of spanking.
Okay, time's up for the answer.
For the pamamalo ba, gumagamit ba dapat ng material or pwede na yung kamay?
I would say you would want to use an object.
An object, right?
Ito naman ay hindi lang personal sa akin, but may mga pedia naman yung mga anak ko, iba't ibang doktor to, and majority of them, at least 80% of them agree that na when you have to spank your child, you have to use an object because your hand is supposed to comfort, is supposed to nurture your child. And I've been doing that since I heard it. Of course, when I became a father the first time, hindi ko naman alam agad yon. The soonest na nagkaroon ng pedia yung mga anak ko, doon ko lang nalaman yung knowledge na yun. And then I started practicing it.
What about your opinions on parents na ginagamit nila yung kamay nila sa pamamalo ng bata?
Sana wag. Well, of course, may sarili silang buhay. Wala naman akong kapangyarihan para kontrolin sila. Pero sana wag. Kasi nga, your hands are made to nurture them sana eh, to bring them comfort. Siyempre, may mga bagay na na-damage sila, hindi naman dahil sa sarili nilang gawa eh. Diba? May mga bagay na nangyaring masama sa kanila, sa mga anak natin, na hindi naman sila yung may kasalanan. Pero a lot of parents would blame them, and then they're gonna spank them using their hands, na sana hindi nga. Kasi nga, ba't siya may kasalanan? Sana gamitin mo yung kamay mo to comfort your child because it's not his fault.
Last question is that, kapag ba pinapalo yung isang bata, kailangan pa rin gamitan ng words after?
Of course. I would say, you know, there's always the trilogy, or not trilogy. Why did I say that? But sabihin na natin, trifecta. So there's the beginning, middle, and the end. You talk to them in the beginning. The climax happens in the middle. So there's when you spank them, then you talk to them again. And that's what I've been doing to my children ever since I've known them.
Okay.
I'm good, sir.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Alright, so a while ago I presented alternatives. This round, I'll be presenting the effects of the pamamalo to the child. Number 1 is going to be the effects on mental and emotional health. Also, the effect on cognitive and behavioral development, and also the effect on family relationships. So number 1, let's focus on the effect of mental and emotional health. So according to UNICEF Philippines, 3 out of 5 children yung naka-experience ng pamamalo. It can be twitching, yung pangurot. It can be spanking, yung pamamalo. It can be hitting, yung pamamalo ng may material. It can be hair pulling, yung pananabunot ng nanay sa anak. I don't know if you experienced that one. And also yung slapping, yung pananampal ng nanay sa anak. Okay. So those things actually, based from studies, ay nagkakaroon tayo ng higher levels of anxiety and higher levels of aggression. Mean to say, nagkakaroon siya ng negative effects sa ating mga bata. Nag-cause siya ng trauma wherein in the future, yung mga bata is ginagaya din nila yung mga nangyari sa kanila. Also, yung effect nito sa cognitive and behavioral development, according naman sa study ni Font and Cage, which we teachers agree, yung mga batang naka-experience ng physical abuse sa bahay, sila yung mga batang may low performance sa school. Sila yung mga batang isolated. Sila yung mga batang hirap makapag-form ng new relationship sa school. So nangyayari yun. We wanted to inform the parents na lahat ng mga bagay na ginagawa natin sa bata is also may effect siya sa school. Kapag pinapalo natin siya, kapag ina-abuse natin siya, may negative effect siya sa school na nakita ng mga teachers. Lastly is yung sa effect sa family relationships. Meron tayong nakitang generational pattern na kung saan yung mga parents na umalo, pinapalo na yung child nila, tapos yung child, pag lumalaki, pinapalo din. And for their reason kung bakit siya pinapalo is because pinagdaanan namin to. So someone has to cut that generational pattern wherein nag-exist siya because of violence. And also, pag tayo ay namalo, so say for example, may mga parents na namalo, nagkakaroon siya ng conflict sa relationships. Mas nag-isolate yung bata, mas nag-keep siya ng secrets, and mas tinatago niya yung totoong nangyayari sa kanya, hindi na sinasabi sa mga magulang niya because that child is actually afraid sa mga consequences na pwedeng gawin ng mga magulang sa kanya. So those are my arguments. The effects, the negative effects sa mga bata.
Okay. All right. Well, how do you define abuse? Because to me, there's a separation between abuse and discipline. Pero you've used the word abuse for about 6, 7 times. How do you define that?
Abuse is actually the extreme way on how you impose punishment to a certain child. Say for example, yung pagpapaload sa asin, pagpapaload sa munggo, and also sobrang pamamalo na that can cause extreme hospitalization is already an abuse. Actually, kahit simpleng palo nga sa isang bata, mag-cause na siya ng isang trauma eh. So there, abuse, again, same with violence, it exists in many forms. And the only thing na kailangan natin gawin is we try all ways on how to avoid the child being abused.
So I don't have further questions.
5 minutes for your last round.
Okay. Right. Well, prior this round, Teacher Ram was discussing the effects of violence or yung pamamalo to mental health and your relationship with people. Of course, throughout the course of this conversation, I would want to identify how a little bit of spanking would, if, as he mentioned, affect or cause trauma. Pero he did also mention that trauma or suffering was necessary as consequence. Pero here he does it where as if you should not face consequences. So I'm trying to figure out where he really stands here. Next, I would want to put emphasis to, given that this was my question earlier, but I would want to answer it too. There's a difference between abuse and discipline. He did mention too, na sabi niya, abuse is the extreme way of doing it. Where do we identify it? When do we identify it as extreme? Kasi napaka subjective kung ano ang extreme. Kasi if you're listening to me right now, just by calling you out and say, "Oy, bawal yan." To you, it might be extreme because of the sound of or volume of my voice. Pero I was just really saying, "No, oy, bawal yan." So what is extreme? Now, yun nga eh. Hindi na natin pinag-uusapan dito kasi ako din naman, ayoko naman talaga ng may abuse na nangyayari. Hindi to tama eh. 'Di ba? Kasi it does not really provide us with any kind of positive result, abuse. And as mentioned earlier, ito nga yung nagkakos ng kung bakit nagiging kriminal ang paglaki ng mga tao. Pero again, kaya din magkakaroon kasi ng abuse if you mismanage your spanking. It's either you spank them today or sila mismo aabusuhin nila yung karapatan, quote-unquote, nila because of not receiving any kind of punishment towards it. Sila ngayon yung mga abuso. Ito yung sinasabi ko din kanina pa na, pwede pala yun. So gagawin ko yun pa ulit-ulit. So they become the abuser. aabusuhin nga nila yung pagkakataon na yun because of not receiving any kind of penalty or any kind of punishment towards it. So, it's either they become disciplined children or abused towards being abusers in the long run. And I don't want my kids to be abusers. I don't want other abusers to abuse my kids. Pero if they are disciplined children, they all have this fear of not hurting others. We would live peacefully, I would believe. At least 90% of the time, nobody's trying to hurt somebody. But because of the trauma that we are allowing them to pay the price for their own actions, as you've said earlier, hindi naman nila alam ma-navigate agad yun eh. At 6, 7 years old, alam nila i-navigate yung emotions nila. They can't do that. They are children. So, if they're paying the price or a large price for something na imbis na, kasi when you spank them, as a parent, pag pinalo ko yung anak ko, I'm paying the price for your mistake. Ako nagbabayad nun. Bakit? Pagka meron ba siyang dinuraang teacher sa school or meron siyang sinapak na teacher, sino ba magbabayad nun? Ako. So sabihin ko lang sa anak ko, okay lang yun. Hindi kita papaluin. Ito yan. O hindi ko na siya isa-send sa school. Hindi ko na siya pag-aaralin kasi may dinuduraan siyang teacher sa school. Hindi rin. So mawawalan siya ng education. All the more that he becomes an abuser in the long run. Papangit din siya. So, ang magandang gagawin ko is, okay, may ginawa kang masama sa teacher mo, I'll spank you to the level where you're gonna feel na masama yung ginawa mo. Mali na mandura ng teacher, mali na mandisrespect ka ng ibang tao. And with that, they will have this understanding yung based on the feel. Kasi again, as children, hindi naman nila may intindihan pa agad yung sinasabi ko eh. In the long run, they will. Kaya nga dito na pumapasok yung sinasabi mo generational. Bakit siya nagiging ganun? Bakit din nila pinapasa? Because it works. Kaya nila yung pinapasa. Kasi if hindi gumagana yun, at some point, somebody would say, wait, ako napapalo ako and I hated that. I didn't like my upbringing. I didn't like the way it turned out to be. So now here I am. I want to give reference to my personal experience. I was put to jail at 8 years old. I was put again to jail at 11. Why is that? Because I didn't have parents to spank me. I lived a lot of liberty. It's very napaka-dramatic para sabihin, oh, kawawa ka naman, wala kang magulang na malaki. Well, it was my life. It was the life that was given to me. But at the same time, let me finish. At the same time, yun nga yung naging resulta eh. Ako ang nagbayad ng kusa at dahil wala akong ibang choice, dahil wala akong magulang lumalaki, walang pumapalo sa akin, say, I didn't live a ruled life. Walang nagsabi sa akin kung ano ang tama o mali. Is it right for me? Is it right for people to put me in jail at 8 years old? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. But it was not a pleasant experience. It was also a traumatic experience. So I'm saying if we are only allowing our parents to bring us this spanking, the chances of us developing disciplined child would be better in comparison to not ever doing anything about it.
2 minutes.
My question is, you agree to parents spanking their child kapag nagkamali sila sa konsepto ng tahanan, tama?
I agree.
Okay. So my question is, kung konsepto siya ng paaralan, agree ka rin ba na ang teacher ay paluin ang isang bata kapag nagkamali siya?
Yes, I do. I agree. And it has happened to me before. It has happened to some of my kids before, and I'm thankful of the teacher who did these things to my kids. It's not abuse. They're disciplining my kids, and now they turn out to be wonderful kids.
Mm-hmm. And also, you mentioned a while ago na from your personal experience, you never experienced spanking.
Mm-hmm.
If, say for example, merong dalawang parallel universe, merong dalawang ikaw, everything is constant. Yung isa, naka-experience ng pamamalo, and yung isa is where you at right now. Mm-hmm. Do you think there will be a difference?
I would want to answer your question by this. If I have to live my life over again, I would have chosen a different life.
Okay.
I would have chosen a life where my father would spank me for every wrong that I've done. I would choose the life where my mother would spank me for the wrong that I've done.
Okay, noted.
Last 5 minutes for you.
So a while ago, I presented alternatives. The second round, I presented the negative effects. This time, what I'm going to present are the real cases and researches that we have. So number one, Meron tayong case na kung saan si John Earl is actually 2 years old from Davao City. Si John Earl, umihi sa kama. Nagkamali. So what happened? Pinalo siya. And anong nangyari doon? Namatay siya because of pamamalo. There's also this case. 8 years old from Pasig City na kung saan nagtamo siya ng extreme hospitalization kasi nagkaroon siya ng hematoma because of pamamalo. Gumamit ng material yung guardian sa pagpalo sa bata. And lastly, this year, 2025, meron tayong case na dalawang magkapatid, isang 12 years old at isang 10 years old. What happened is that sila ay nag-report na yung kanilang father ay pinapalo sila, sinasampal sila, and all forms of violence, including yung pamamalo ng kahoy na may pako. So there. Those are the things that we wanted to avoid. Those extreme punishments, those extremes na violent ways. And saan ba ito nag-uugat? Nag-uugat to sa simple pamalo. So we wanted to avoid those forms of violence. Another one naman is yung sa research ng Filipino... Sorry, cut. Another one is yung sa research naman entitled Filipino Adolescents' Experiences of Abusive Parent-Child Relationship in Low Socioeconomic Status Families. So alam niyo ba na nagkakaroon ng effect yung pamamalo sa bata sa paglaki niya? Say for example, yung pagpili ng papangasawa, yung pagbuo ng family. So in this study, sinasabi dito na kapag ang isang bata daw na naka-experience ng extreme na pamamalo, may tendency na ang isang bata is hindi na mag-pursue na buong na gumawa ng family because that child has actually experienced a lot of abuse from his or her childhood. Kaya ayaw na niyang gumawa ng sariling family. So those are the things that we wanted to avoid. Yung real cases na nangyari and also yung sa research-based. Another thing that I want to highlight is a while ago you mentioned that you pinapalo mo sila so that they will not become villains and criminals. So in that case, parang ganito sa situation natin, ang nangyayaring villains and criminals are not the child alone. Ang nangyayaring villains and criminals are actually the parents, kagaya ng present ko examples. So, titingnan ba natin ang bata, pinapalo ba natin sila because we don't want them to grow criminals and villains? Or pinapalo ba natin sila because we ourselves ay napalo, na-experience natin mapalo? And so, pinapalo ba natin sila because of ayaw natin sila maging criminals or villains? Or do we see ourselves ba na tayo, yung mga adults, yung nagiging criminals and villains by imposing these forms of violence sa mga bata? So yun lang po ang aking real cases and also research-based effects ng pamamalo.
Okay. I don't think I have questions because the question I have in mind has already been answered. Because again, in his third case, nalagyan na naman ng emphasis yung salitang abuse, extreme, this and that, which again would just bring me to the things that I already said na yun lang naman pala yung issue. If it goes to the extreme, then okay, then it goes to the extreme. But hindi naman nga yun eh. He did say na yung simpleng pamamalo would eventually translate to further pamamalo na eventually it becomes extreme. Doon lang, I don't want to agree with that, but again, this is not my time to disagree or not. It's time to ask questions. So again, I don't have questions further. So I'm gonna go with it.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Bago tayo magpatuloy, okay lang ba na magkamayan muna kayong dalawa?
Brother.
Parang namamalo talaga siya. Ramdam ko.
Hi, I'm Zaina. May question ako kay Sir Ram. For POV lang ng mga tao or family na hindi naman nabibigyan ng toys or gadgets yung mga anak, para gawing punishment na i-remove yun sa kanila, sabi mo kanina. Paano mo i-handle yung maging hindi violent sa pagdisiplina na even in verbal, kung kahit kausapin in a nice way, hindi pa rin nakikinig or sumusunod sa magulang or guardians nila?
Thank you for that, Zaina. So for me, the loss of privilege doesn't have to be always materials. So you can think of many ways na pwede mong tanggalin sa isang bata. So say for example, the playtime is actually one example. Pwede mong tanggalin yung playtime sa kanila. Anything that matters to them, pwede mong tanggalin temporarily for you to impose your own kind of punishment with them. Again, you don't have to be violent. You don't have to resort to spanking for you to impose your own kind of punishment. You just have to be creative. You just have to be thoughtful and mindful again. Yeah, thank you. I hope you answer. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, maraming salamat. And by the way guys, meron po pala tayong mga studio audience. And gusto ko rin i-acknowledge ang presence ng Agon. So andito si JJ and si Can. So may mga questions ba kayo sa ating mga guests?
Again,
Do I have to stand up? Do I have to stand up po ba? So this is on kanina pa habang nag-iisip kami ng mga So this is on while we're thinking of our questions. Actually, we are not formulating but writing questions kanina while listening to you guys. And as for someone also that lived, independently for quite some time, here's my question to you, sir. Well, our parents is our role model, right? So children sees their parents as their role models while they grow up. So they tend to replicate or gayahin yung mga ginagawa ng parents as they grow up because they think that works. That's like the effective way on how they grew up and how they were molded. So my question is, what should parents do if positive reinforcement? How should a parent respond when a child repeats dangerous or defiant behavior? Like, until to what extent, parang ganun? Or, how can you ensure discipline is not being driven by by their parents' frustration or anger?
I cannot guarantee anything. We don't live a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world. We deal with imperfect human beings. My children are not perfect, and somebody else's children are not perfect. And with that, this is when I would have to take teacher Ram's advice, where, okay, just allow them to take whatever punishment nature gives them out of that. Because I already did my job. And from the get-go, I already said that, there are parameters to my case. And syempre, hindi naman lahat, hindi absolute to eh. The things that I've said are not absolute. The things that I've said worked for a lot of people, it worked for me, but it does not guarantee that it would work for everybody else in the world. And kaya mo na-bring up yan because may mga cases naman talaga na ganyan, na ginawa mo na lahat, dinisiplina mo na, ganyan, pero wala pa rin din. I'll just allow them to live the life that they want. After all, ayaw mo makinig sa akin, and then just live the life that you want. And if you're an adult, lumaki ka ng ganyan, and then pay the price for whatever you do. Siguro mabait lang talaga sa akin yung Diyos na despite me having no parents growing up, I still turned out to be fine today. Pero for most cases, yung mga lalaking katulad ko na walang magulang, you will see them in jail, you will see them doing drugs, you will see them being recruited in a terrorist group, diba? So, yun lang. Then if that's the destiny that they want to take, then I'll let them be.
May question pa kayo?
JJ po, from Aegon. So, ang question ko po is, nabanggit niyo po kanina na yung marami pong ways for punishing children po. And nabanggit niyo na it can be a lot, basta it's like taking something that matters to them po. Diba, as children po, or yung kids, maliit lang yung mundo nila. Maliit lang yung scope ng things that matter to them. So what if yung thing na tinake out mo from them caused trauma to them? Kasi yun lang yung bagay na nagmamatter sa kanila eh. Diba? As kids, yung mga kids, they give like so much value sa small things for us. Pero sa kanila sobrang laking bagay. So what if that caused trauma? Hindi ba extreme abuse din yan? Like, inaano nyo po sa physical abuse? Yan po ang question.
Thank you for that. Loss of privilege or taking away something from them doesn't have to always be material. Also, will it cause trauma? Maybe yes, maybe no. And again, yung loss of privilege, it will only work for temporary lang siya. So hindi siya for long term. And also, for loss of privileges na tinatawag natin, you just have to let the child reflect kung ano yung mga mali niyang nagawa and kung paano niya tatama yung pagkakamali niya. Then that's a time for you to bring back the things na, or bring back those things na kinuha mo sa kanya. So, yan.
Ang follow-up question ko lang po is, how do we draw the line kung ano
Ulit,
po
wait
yung...
lang, ulitin mo.
Where do we...
walang
Sorry. So, ang follow-up question ko po is, where do we draw the line if... How do we identify kung ano yung safe na punishment and ano yung magkakos ng trauma to them? How do I identify those?
I think lahat ng safe, lahat ng materials na kunin mo sa kanila is considered as safe. Kasi in the first place, you own it as a parent. Yung gadgets, you are the one who bought them for them. So, I think lahat ng materials na binigay mo, pwede mo siyang bawiin. Kasi lahat yun ay considered as privilege dun sa bata. Now, you can take those away. You can explain na ito, binabawi ko to because you did something wrong. So there, I don't think it will be a trauma for the child kapag nawalan siya ng isang bagay temporarily na number one, hindi naman sa kanila. So yeah. Thank you.
You know.
Hi, I'm May. And siguro po yung question ko for Sir Ram. Paano po kapag to the extent na kahit ilang beses mo nang pinakausapan yung bata, hindi pa rin talaga siya nakikinig? Would you still consider the system na gusto niyo pong i-impose na as much as possible verbal lang ang pagdidisiplina sa bata? Or would you take na i-consider yung sinasabi ni Sir na pamamalo because hindi na siya nakikinig? Hindi na siya madaan sa diplomasyang pakiusap, parang ganon. Ayun po.
Okay, so number one, kapag ang isang bata ay hindi na talaga madaan sa pakiusapan, lahat na ng modes of means, lahat na ginawa mo. So, would you resort to spanking? The answer is no. Maybe the problem here is not the punishment. Maybe the problem here is the parenting. Maybe you should explore ways on how you discipline the child. Kasi from the moment that you brought a human life here on earth, you should have accepted the responsibility na pag-discipline natural. There are so many ways on how to discipline the child and you don't have to always resort to spanking. So you think creatively on how to discipline a child. The parenting is the issue here more than the punishment.
I guess yung follow-up question niya is yun nga, paano? Like, can you give her ways of because kailangan niya ng creativity and I guess she doesn't have all the time in the world to be as creative as possibly us. But yun nga, do you have like stuff in mind na you can share with May na yun nga, what exactly do we do in that situation?
Number one is yung attention. And from time to time, constant reminders of setting rules and expectations. Yung attention, malaking bagay nun sa bata. Kapag in-ignore mo siya, malaman niya na, okay, may something na mali yung ginawa. Kapag hindi pa rin nag-work, by all means, ang kailangan mo nang baguhin is hindi yung punishment talaga. Siguro mag-explore ka as a parent, there are many, many ways. Yung sa parenting style, kung paano ma-discipline yung isang bata. So, yun.
May follow-up lang
Yun,
po.
sabi ko na eh.
Last na lang. Siguro,
Parang lahat
paano
si
if lahat na talaga ng creative ways to the extent na nagawa mo na. But would you consider consulting what do you call by that? Psychiatrist, young professional, counseling for the child? Baka kasi iba rin yung understanding. Sorry.
I have a perfect
Okay,
answer
ulit.
for that.
Sorry. Paano ko ulitin yun? So, ayan na nga. So, considering po na lahat na is na give na natin to the extent sa mga creative ways. Pero, would you consider na ipa-counseling siya dun sa mga professional? Kasi baka mamaya iba yung understanding ng bata. When it comes to, kasi kung marami ng beses, tapos hindi talaga nakikinig, baka may ibang form siya, or may iba something sa kanyang kaisipan na dapat nabigyan ng pansin.
Okay. That's actually true. May mga cases talaga na kung saan yung that's actually true. May mga cases talaga na yung mga bata is hindi na talaga nakikinig sa parents nila kahit ano pang gawin. So, ang ginagawang way ng parent is yung na-experience ko rin, tumatawag sila sa mga teachers. And they let us do the disciplining for them. So yun, ginagawa nila is ginagawa nila kaming panakot ng mga teachers. And that happens so kung saan yung mga parents tumatawag sa teachers. And then the children would listen to the teachers more than their parents. So, dun sila sumusunod. And I think, yun yung perfect example ko na if you no longer cannot control, if you can no longer control your child, maybe talk to someone, talk to their teachers, and maybe talk to other persons as well. Communicate with other parents on different strategies on how to discipline a child.
Sobrang familiar na kasi sila sa magulang nila. Kumbaga, yun nga yung sinasabi ko kanina na eventually they would lose respect towards you. So, pero yun nga, ibig sabihin, to sum it all up, he still agrees that fear should be instilled. Kagaya nga nasabi mo, di ba? Parang ginamit kayo to instill fear para matakot. So,
Question pa. Can I ask one of the
Okay. One last question and then kung may gusto kayong i-promote.
kailangan ba sabay kaming sasagot?
Hindi no. Pwede po.
Boy band.
In chorus. Tapos interpret na daw po. Ayun. So, as we all know, Pavlov, if everyone's familiar with Pavlov, he used conditioning for his dogs and animals whenever they respond or in response to certain situations, right? So, with that, how can parents balance setting boundaries and allowing children the freedom to explore and learn from their mistakes?
Okay. Well, with that, sa akin kasi, from the get-go, hindi naman ako necessarily talagang nag-disagree sa lahat ng sinabi ni Teacher Ram, no? Some of the things na sinabi ni Teacher Ram, I practice personally. Kaya nga sabi ko, di ba, mayroon akong trifecta, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So, I do really talk to my children first. Now, I think that sets the balance na, okay, there's the way of communication and then there's the way of punishment. So, I'll give you both. And then, whatever works, works.
Paulit nga ng tanong, sir. Sorry, na-distract ako sa...
How can parents balance setting boundaries and allowing children freedom to explore and learn from their mistakes?
Number one is for me to allow the child to experience failure, to experience the natural consequences. And I think as parents, it is our rule for us to be guide lang. For them to try out new things. And also, speaking of, kasi na ano kay Pavlov, I'm more of B.F. Skinner kasi. I'm more of fan of rewards and punishments rather than conditioning. Yeah.
And I also love reading kasi so we, yun.
Okay.
Medyo I have like few ideas about conditioning and rewards and...
Psychologist ka, sir.
No, pero aspiring.
Okay, that's nice.
So you're familiar with Skinner and Pavlov?
Pavlov, yeah.
Okay.
Egon, baka may gusto kayong i-promote or i-plug?
Ayun, again, we are Aegon. We are a P-pop trainee boy group that's currently under the making and soon be rising. Also, we are aiming to be one of the best boy groups here in the industry. And with that, we want to promote ourselves through our social media by following us through Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube channels by simply searching Aegon or Aegon_official. Lalabas naman po yung mga pangalan namin. And also, we have released our pre-debut single, which is Try Na Get Ya, which was written by JJ and me. We did that. And that's something that we're proud of. And I hope you guys would support that. And until now, we are currently working on our debut and our upcoming projects. And I hope you guys would look out for us and support us in the future. Thank you. And thank you for having us here. Sobrang nag-enjoy po kami. Like, ang dami namin natututunan and to relate. We have related with everyone here sa mismong set. And it's a pleasure and honor for us to witness this debate. Thank you.
Kung pwede lang magtanong pa eh.
Wow, tama na. Tama na.
Like, ganun namin na-enjoy.
Nung sinasabi yung social media siya, Twitter, wala nang Twitter.
It's X. So, ulitin ko ba?
Okay na yan. Ipa-flash na lang natin sa screen.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, maraming salamat sa ating audience, sa Aegon, maraming salamat sa pagpunta nyo dito at sa ating dalawang guests, maraming salamat sa pagbabahagi ng inyong opinion. So, sa ating mga viewers ng mga anak na nakaranas ng physical punishment, para sa inyo, naging effective ba ang physical punishment o hindi kaya mas maiintindihan ng isang bata ang kanyang nagawang pagkakamali kung siya ay kakausapin na lang ng mahinahon? Again, please let us know in the comment section at ipagpapatuloy pa po natin ang ating talakayan sa susunod na episode. So make sure na nakafollow po kayo sa aming mga social media platforms. At kung may natutuhan kayo sa ating episode ngayon, pwede nyo po itong i-share sa inyong mga kakilala para mag-benefit din ho sila sa ganitong klase ng mga content. So muli, ako po si Armando Bibay at ito po ang Unbiased.